Before you dive into this scary story, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like it. It helps us create new scary stories. My name is Victoria, and what happened to me changed my life forever. I always considered myself brave and independent, but crossing the border in America turned out to be a trial I could never have foreseen. In this video, I will tell you a story full of mysteries, terror, and unexpected twists. If you are ready to immerse yourself in an atmosphere of a true nightmare and discover what might lie beyond the familiar world, stay with me until the end. I grew up in a small town where dreams of freedom and new opportunities were almost mythical for me. However, an inner voice always hinted that my destiny was meant to be something more than a quiet life in a familiar circle. That's why I decided to set out on a journey, hoping to find my fate. The American dream beckoned me with its glitz, promises of change, and new horizons. But no one warned me that every dream has its dark side. My journey began on a late evening when the sky turned a deep indigo, and the stars seemed to watch me as if they were a portent. At that moment, I had no idea that fate was preparing something truly inexplicable for me. My first steps onto the territory, where reality and myth merged, were filled with excitement and a hint of fear. Memories of my childhood home mingled with a premonition of the challenges to come, and every minute of my journey felt as long as an eternity. The first obstacle on my path was an abandoned border station, about which legends were told. They said that inexplicable phenomena had once occurred there, and now this place had become a meeting point between the world of the living and the realm of shadows. An eerie silence surrounded the station, and the air seemed to be saturated with a mysterious energy that sent shivers down my spine. It felt as if nature itself was warning me of the impending danger. I gathered all my courage and took the first steps toward the ruined building where, according to local lore, the border between two worlds was once guarded. Once inside, I immediately felt the darkness gathering around me. The half-forgotten corridors, covered in a layer of dust and neglect, whispered of times long gone. Every crack in the walls seemed to be a witness to terrible stories, and the slight creak of the floor beneath my feet reminded me that I was not in a safe place. Deep within the building, I noticed an old map marked with mysterious symbols and paths leading beyond the known world. This discovery was the first hint that my journey would take an unexpected turn. The further I went, the more I found myself in a deserted alley on the outskirts of the town, where a building that looked like a sanctuary of oblivion harbored many secrets. I walked through narrow streets where time seemed to have stopped, and every house could tell its own story of a past filled with pain, suffering, and love. It was here that I met a strange woman dressed in an old-fashioned coat, her eyes filled with wisdom and sorrow. Her voice was soft but penetrating. "You are seeking answers, Victoria, but remember that some doors open only at the cost of great sacrifice." This moment became a turning point in my story. The stranger's words made me pause and wonder, what price might my search for the truth ultimately demand? I could not turn back despite the warnings. An unquenchable thirst for knowledge burned in my heart, and I understood that only through trials could one find the true meaning of the world. The further crossing of the border proved to be far more ominous than I could ever have imagined. On that night, when the moon hid behind the clouds and the wind howled through the windows of an abandoned house. I felt as if unseen entities were watching me from behind. They seemed to be waiting for my arrival, ready to open the doors to the unknown. With every step forward, I increasingly felt that reality itself was beginning to fracture. In the corridors of the old building, time seemed to slow down, and the shadows grew ever denser and more menacing. The sounds that had previously seemed like a mere echo of the past now took on distinct shapes, transforming into a soft whisper that uttered mysterious words. These sounds, as if guiding me toward a hidden passage, led me to a concealed door, behind which, according to legends, lay the answers to the questions tormenting my soul. And so, after several hours wandering through the labyrinth of abandoned corridors, I found myself standing before a massive wooden door, adorned with carved symbols, reminiscent of ancient rituals. The door was ajar, and as soon as I stepped over its threshold, I entered a strange room where the smell of damp earth mingled with that of old books. A ray of light, filtering through a small window, illuminated dusty beams, as if to remind me that even in the deepest darkness, there is always a glimmer of hope. In the center of the room stood an antique writing desk, upon which lay a dust-covered notebook. I carefully opened it, and my eyes fell upon lines written in a neat handwriting that seemed to belong to fate itself. The notebook's pages described events that occurred many years ago, when the border between worlds was thinner and reality more fragile. The entries recounted the stories of people who had sought to decipher the mysterious symbols, and how, one day, their quest led them to contact beings from another dimension. According to the author, these beings were both harbingers of hope and harbingers of doom. Every word on those pages evoked a strange feeling of déjà vu in me, as though I had already faced such trials in other worlds and lives. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a dull thud echoing through the building. I felt my heart beat faster and turned uncertainly, trying to locate the source of the sound. Behind the door leading to the next corridor, a silhouette appeared, a form unlike any living creature I had ever seen. The silhouette was shrouded in darkness, its contours merging with the night. In that moment, as if obeying an unknown law, I felt an inner calling, an invitation to pass through this door despite all my fears and doubts. I knew that trials awaited me ahead that might cost me everything, but there was no turning back. Overcoming the trembling in my voice and the goosebumps on my skin, I stepped into a corridor where the darkness seemed to be a living entity, and the silence a portent of doom. The light of the lantern I had taken with me by chance cast long shadows on the walls, and each one told its own story. My footsteps echoed on the stone floor, and I felt myself sinking deeper into an atmosphere where past and present merged into one intricate pattern. The sounds of footsteps and the soft rustle of paper might have belonged to invisible guardians of this place, entrusted with the secrets beyond ordinary comprehension. Before long, I found myself in a room where the air was filled with an indescribable chill, and the walls were covered with symbols reminiscent of ancient incantations. In the center of the room lay a circle drawn in chalk on the cold floor, and in the middle of that circle lay a small, yet evidently significant object, an amulet emitting a strange, barely perceptible glow. I knew that this amulet was the key to unlocking the mysteries hidden in this ominous place. Its shape and patterns echoed the symbols described in the notebook, and I felt my heart quicken in anticipation of the encounter with the unknown. Summoning all my courage, I picked up the amulet and felt a cold energy permeate every cell of my body. In that moment, fragments of thought flashed through my mind. The realization that everything happening was not coincidental. Perhaps my destiny had been sealed long before I set foot on this forbidden territory. I understood that the amulet was not merely an artifact, but a kind of conduit between worlds, capable of opening the gates to another dimension. But such power always comes at a price, and I could not help but wonder what price I would have to pay for unraveling this mystery. Unexpectedly, a low, almost imperceptible whisper filled the air around me. A voice, emanating from the depths of my consciousness, said, "You are not alone, Victoria. Behind every shadow, there are more shadows, and every truth conceals a lie." Those words, filled with ancient wisdom and simultaneous caution, made me freeze in place. I felt as though time had stopped, while the darkness around me deepened, ready to engulf me completely. Yet even in the face of inevitable danger, I could not retreat. My inner sense of justice and longing for truth compelled me to press on, regardless of the fear and unseen threats. My further steps led me to an old library located in the basement of a deserted mansion, where, according to rumors, records of ancient rituals and contacts with other worlds were kept. The shelves, burdened with dusty tomes and manuscripts, seemed to be silent witnesses to an era when the boundary between the living and the supernatural was far thinner than it is now. There, among forgotten pages and tattered bindings, I discovered the diary of one of the former guardians of the border. Its entries were filled with ominous reflections, warnings, and descriptions of events that made my blood run cold. The diary recounted how, one night when the moon hid behind the clouds, inexplicable phenomena began to occur within the mansion's walls. Shadows started moving on their own, and sounds resembling the cries and whispers of long-departed souls filled the corridors. The guardian, describing his feelings, wrote, "I felt that every movement of mine was being watched by unseen forces, and that my soul was gradually detaching from my flesh. The boundary between worlds had become transparent, and I saw things that no human mind should ever witness." These words made me wonder if indeed my fate was entwined with the ancient mysteries hidden behind every door in this place. Moving further, I found myself in a narrow corridor whose walls were scrawled with enigmatic symbols that shimmered in the dim light. These symbols seemed to pulsate in rhythm with my heartbeat, stirring memories of images I could never forget. They were a sign that behind every corner lay something that defied logic and common sense. Fear intermingled with curiosity, pushing me forward, and I began to understand intuitively that every inscription on these walls was a key to comprehending the true nature of what was unfolding. In one of these corridors, I stumbled upon a small room where the air was imbued with the scent of old candles and fading memories. On the wall hung a portrait of a woman with eyes full of melancholy and unending sorrow. The face in the portrait was at once familiar and strange, as if it were a reflection of my own, from a past I had desperately tried to forget. Next to the portrait stood a writing desk, on which lay another diary, written in a neat hand that described rituals aimed at restoring the balance between worlds. Every entry in that diary was filled with the terror of the inevitable consequences of breaching the border between the living and the dead. I read every word, and with each paragraph, The sense of foreboding and premonition grew stronger. Suddenly, the door leading to the adjacent room slammed shut behind me with a resounding crash, causing my heart to pound frantically in my chest. I tried to open it, but the door was locked, and panic set in as I realized I was trapped in a labyrinth of ghosts from the past. In that moment, memories of all the lost friends and acquaintances who had warned me about the risks of seeking the truth came crashing back with renewed force. Yet, despite the fear and doubts, I knew I had to find a way out. A thought kept repeating in my mind. Every door, even if it appears locked, has a key. You just have to find it. In search of an exit, I began to inspect the room closely. Through gaps in the old walls, I noticed a faint glimmer of light. That barely visible crack seemed to be my only chance for salvation. I approached it, and with some effort pushed aside the debris that hindered the light's entry. In that instant, the light flooded through the small opening, revealing a narrow passage that led to yet another part of this eerie building. My heart raced, but I understood that there was no time for hesitation. Clutching the amulet in my hand, I stepped into the new corridor without looking back. This corridor was narrow and long, its walls inscribed with ancient symbols and runes. Every mark seemed to be alive, as if trying to deliver a message from the past. I could feel invisible eyes watching my every move, and each echo of my footsteps confirmed that I was not alone. Suddenly, from the depths of the corridor, a soft, almost imperceptible laugh was heard, a laugh imbued with the irony of fate and a chilling premonition of doom. That eerie melody of fear made me shudder, yet at the same time, it stirred an indomitable resolve within me to uncover what lay beyond the boundary of my understanding. Minute by minute, the corridor became more twisted, and its corners grew darker. At one point, it seemed to me that the walls were closing in, and that the air had become so thick it was hard to breathe. I felt my fear gradually transforming into determination. I had to uncover the truth, even if it turned out to be the most terrifying of all possibilities. My hands trembled, but my heart was steadfast. Every detail of this place, from the creaking floorboards to the soft whispers of unseen voices, was a part of a grand mystery that I was determined to solve at any cost. The passage eventually led me into a small hall where time seemed to have frozen. In the center of the hall was a round table, covered in the dust of centuries, surrounded by antique chairs that once hosted those who knew more than an ordinary life would allow. On the table lay scattered pieces of paper with rough sketches of maps, diagrams of rituals, and ancient inscriptions so cryptic their meanings escaped a casual glance. I sensed that every detail here had been deliberately left by someone who wanted to pass on a message to future generations. Perhaps it was a clue on how to properly cross the boundary between worlds, or a warning that every discovery comes with its own danger. Suddenly, a slender figure appeared from behind one of the walls in the hall, barely distinguishable in the half-light. The figure was dressed in a long gown, its face hidden beneath a hood. It silently approached me, and in its voice was a deep sadness, as if it carried the weight of age-old suffering. "You have found what you were seeking," it whispered, its words echoing like an ancient prophecy. "But know that every truth comes at a price, and you must be prepared to pay it." These words made my heart constrict with anxiety. Who was this woman? What price must I pay for my relentless quest for the truth? The figure came closer and handed me a small, leather-bound folder, decorated with patterns reminiscent of the symbols I had seen earlier. I opened it and discovered inside an old scroll depicting scenes of people confronting supernatural forces. Every drawing was filled with ominous details, and the symbols on the scroll seemed to be alive, as if breathing with their own life. It became clear to me that this scroll was the key to understanding the mysteries surrounding the crossing of the border between worlds, and perhaps it would help me find a way out of this labyrinth. The light in the hall began to dim, and the room filled with a chill, as if death itself had come to claim the last traveler. The figure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving me alone with its message and the terror that gripped every cell of my body. Clutching the scroll, I sensed invisible forces beginning to surround me, penetrating into the deepest recesses of my soul. My thoughts mingled with the voices of the past, and I realized that the answers I sought had long been near. They were woven into the very fabric of this eerie place. The lantern's light began to flicker, and the corridors seemed to stir, inviting me to venture further into the depths of the unknown. I left the hall, carrying the scroll and the amulet as symbols of both hope and danger. Every step I took resonated through the labyrinthine corridors, and the thought that I was standing at the boundary between worlds filled me with both trepidation and resolve. I understood that there was no turning back. The truth I sought demanded my complete immersion in darkness and the unknown. Along winding corridors, I discovered a staircase leading to a dungeon where, according to legend, ancient artifacts and ritual items capable of opening the gates between worlds were hidden. Descending, I found myself in an expansive hall, whose walls were adorned with frescoes depicting scenes from the myths and legends of ancient peoples. Every brushstroke, every line on the frescoes seemed not merely a picture, but a key to mysteries that had remained unsolved for centuries. There, I saw images of beings resembling semi-divine guardians who protected the boundary between worlds, and I realized that my fate was now inextricably linked with these ancient forces. At the center of the hall stood an altar covered in a thin layer of dust and time. On the altar lay various objects, from ancient daggers to symbolic figurines depicting gods and spirits. According to the diary's accounts, this was the place where the ritual awakening of a force capable of uniting two worlds was to take place. I carefully placed the amulet and the scroll on the altar, feeling the energy of the place intensify around me. The air quivered, and the walls seemed to echo with ancient whispers. This was the moment of truth, the moment when the choice I had made would determine not only my fate, but also the course of events connected to the boundary between life and death. I recalled the words of the mysterious woman, "Every truth comes at a price." In that moment, I realized that the price might be exorbitantly high, but retreat was no longer an option. I concentrated, recalled the ancient incantations I had heard in the diary, and began to recite the words that reverberated through the emptiness of the hall. With each uttered sound, the altar began to glow with a faint but growing light. The shadows that had previously lurked in the corners started to move, and the air around me filled with an invisible force, as if nature itself were gathering to bear witness to this ritual. Suddenly, the floor of the hall trembled, and from beneath the altar, a faint light arose, swirling into a vortex of fleeting images. Before me, the images of ancient guardians appeared, their faces filled with wisdom and pain, their eyes shining with a cold light. One of the guardians approached me and whispered, "Your soul is chosen, Victoria. But know that knowledge is a burden, and it demands sacrifices." Those words penetrated deep into my heart, evoking both fear and awe. At that very moment, I felt the energy in the hall, amplified by my words and the ancient incantations, begin to merge the past and the present. Worlds that had seemed separate now appeared as one, and I realized that I stood on the threshold of a discovery that could change everything. With each passing moment, the vibrations of the space around me grew more palpable, and time itself seemed to waver. I saw the images of the past become clearer, while the whispers of ancient voices filled my consciousness with long-forgotten knowledge. And then, in the midst of that mystical union, a portal appeared before my eyes, a shimmering veil behind which lay another world, full of unexplored mysteries and dangers. My heart pounded so fiercely, it seemed it would burst from my chest. Yet I knew that stepping through the portal was a step into the unknown, where every moment could be my last. Before me stood a choice: to remain in this world where ancient knowledge and power intertwined with peril, or to take a decisive step and cross the border into the unexplored. Recalling all the warnings, the mysterious woman's words, and the images recorded in the diaries, I realized that my destiny had never been accidental. My journey was not merely an attempt to find answers to the questions that tormented my soul, but a quest for a truth that could change not only my life, but also the fates of all who dared to follow. Clutching the amulet in my hand and taking a deep breath, I stepped toward the portal. In that moment, time seemed to stop, and I felt all the forces of the world converging into this one decisive moment. When I crossed the threshold, the world around me transformed. I found myself in a realm where the laws of physics and logic gave way to inexplicable phenomena. Here, every movement of the air, every sound, every shadow carried its own significance. The border between worlds was blurred, and I sensed that invisible threads were binding me to this realm, as though I had become an integral part of it. Around me, luminous silhouettes floated, and I heard the echoes of voices welcoming me like an old friend. This was a place where fear and hope danced together in a single waltz, where every moment brimmed with the potential for change. In the distance, I saw the silhouette of a grand building resembling an ancient temple, and I understood that the answer to all my questions lay within its walls. The road to the temple was winding and dangerous, filled with traps and riddles, but the desire to uncover the truth propelled me forward. Each step resonated in this strange world, and every turn seemed to test my faith and courage. On my way to the temple, I encountered beings unlike any earthly animals, creatures that exuded an ancient power and wisdom. They silently observed me, and in their eyes I saw a reflection of my own destiny, a destiny intertwined with the eternal search for truth and the meaning of existence. One such encounter occurred near an ancient pond, its water dark and mysterious. Next to me stood a figure in a long robe, and in a voice like the wind whispering along the pond's edge, it said, "Your path is chosen. But remember, Victoria, that the truth can be bitter. Are you ready to learn what lies beyond the boundary of the familiar?" Those words, spoken without excess emotion, stirred both fear and resolve within me. I replied only with silence, yet my inner voice insisted that time was relentlessly moving forward, and I had to follow my own path, no matter how difficult it might be. Passing through a thicket where the shadows of trees danced in time with the night winds, I finally reached the entrance of the temple. Its massive doors were adorned with carvings, depicting battles between light and darkness, good and evil, life and death. With trembling voice and inevitable resolve, I approached the door, recalling all the words and signs that had brought me here. I placed my hand on the ancient surface, and suddenly, the door swung open, admitting me into the half-light of a vast hall. The hall was illuminated by the flickering light of torches, and the air was imbued with the aroma of incense and ancient rituals. On an altar at the center of the hall lay a book with thick, yellowed pages, upon which centuries-old knowledge was inscribed. This book was the sacred covenant between worlds, and I realized that the answer to all the mysteries of my journey was contained within its pages. I carefully opened the book, and the words written on its pages seemed to come alive, filling the hall with the sounds of long-forgotten languages. Every word, every incantation penetrated deep into my soul, evoking memories of experiences I had already lived in other worlds and lifetimes. Like a flowing stream, the knowledge enveloped me, opening before me endless expanses of truth that had once seemed unattainable. I read about ancient rituals, about contacts with otherworldly beings, about guarding the border between worlds, and I understood that my mission was not merely to seek the truth, but to preserve it and pass it on to those who dared to look beyond the familiar. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the hall, like distant thunder, and the pages of the book began to turn on their own. I felt invisible forces rushing toward me, trying to deliver a message so ancient and powerful that it could change the course of history. Every word, every illustration in the book seemed to call me to action, to make a choice that would determine not only my future, but that of all who believed in the power of truth. At that moment, I realized that I stood on the threshold of the greatest discovery of my life. The border between worlds was not merely a line, but a delicate thread connecting souls, times, and spaces. The truth I had been searching for turned out to be an intrinsic part of the eternal cycle of birth and death, light and darkness. And although the price of knowledge might be unbearably high, I was prepared to pay it, to preserve the light in this world and pass it on. The words of ancient voices, the whispers of shadows, and the pulsating light of the torches merged into a single symphony, heralding the beginning of a new era. In that moment, I felt that my destiny was not just a personal story, but part of a grand design in which every soul plays its role. My experiences, fears, and hopes became threads woven into the endless tapestry of time. And if you, dear viewers, feel ready to embark on your own journey, to seek the truth, and understand that the borders between worlds are mere illusions, then subscribe to my channel, hit like, and share this video. Perhaps it is your heart that will open up to new knowledge and dare to peer beyond the boundaries of the familiar. My journey continued, and every new step became a trial, filled with inexplicable phenomena and encounters with beings that existed between worlds. I walked along narrow corridors of ancient ruins, where the walls told stories of forgotten civilizations, where every stone preserved the memory of bygone eras. My mind teemed with questions. What if the border between worlds is not a barrier, but an invitation to understanding? What if the fear we feel at the sight of the unknown is merely a reflection of our own inner demons? On one such winding path, I came across an abandoned chapel, standing at the edge of nowhere, as if forgotten by time. Its windows were shattered, and the doors, adorned with intricate carvings, spoke of a former glory and mystical power that once enveloped this place. Inside the chapel, there was a strange, almost sacred silence. A gentle breeze sneaked in through the broken windows, stirring the dust and creating the illusion of an unseen presence. I felt as if this silence filled me with both calm and dread, as though here I could hear the voice of destiny itself. Approaching the altar, covered in small inscriptions in an ancient language, I discovered yet another note left by someone who, too, had sought answers to the questions of existence. The inscription read, "Truth is born where fear gives way to love, and the border between worlds is only a reflection of our souls." Those words made me ponder how deeply our beliefs and emotions shape our perception of reality. Perhaps true strength resided not in an amulet or a scroll, but in our own hearts, capable of overcoming any obstacle. I spent several hours in the chapel, contemplating what I had read and absorbing the atmosphere of antiquity. Time here seemed to flow differently, as if the universe itself had decided to slow its pace, allowing every moment to stretch into eternity. At that moment, I realized that my quest had led me not only to the border between worlds, but also to the boundary between past and present, between fear and hope. This realization became my guiding star, indicating that the answers that had eluded me for so long were now beckoning me forward. When I finally stepped out of the chapel, the sky was already beginning to lighten, as if the night was yielding before the face of a new day. But even the dawn could not dispel the darkness that had taken residence in my soul. I understood that every moment I had experienced, every fear and every encounter, had become part of my journey, a part of a grand story that continues even today. My feet carried me along a winding road where every turn could bring either solace or fresh pain, new hope, or another trial. And so, after many days of wandering between worlds and eras, I reached the place I had dreamed of my entire life. It was a place where the boundary between what we call life and what lies beyond became as transparent as a gossamer veil. Here, I found the answer to the question that had tormented my heart from the very beginning. What is true freedom? The answer was not in fleeing reality, but in accepting it in all its complexity, with all its fears, shadows, and light. At that moment, I understood that crossing the border was not merely a physical act, but a profound spiritual journey through which we come to know ourselves. Every encounter, every loss, every trial overcame became a step leading to a higher truth. I recalled the words of the mysterious woman, her soft voice filled with sorrow and wisdom, and I felt how the warmth of her words comforted my heart, even in this cold, uncharted realm. I decided that my story was not just a tale of fear and the unknown, but an invitation to everyone willing to ask themselves, what if the boundary between worlds is an invitation to freedom? If you, dear viewers, feel that the fire of curiosity burns in your soul, if you are ready to risk everything to uncover new horizons, then remember, each of us is capable of crossing the border that separates fear from love, the known from the unknown. My journey did not end the moment I crossed that threshold. It merely transformed, evolving into an endless quest for truth and an aspiration to understand the depths of one's own soul. Every new day brought fresh challenges and revelations. Sometimes it felt as though time merged into a single moment, and all the past, present, and future existed simultaneously, intertwined in an endless dance of existence. I remember once, when the moon had risen high in the night sky, standing on the edge of a cliff, watching the twinkling lights of a distant city. In that moment, I realized that my life was a continuous movement forward, regardless of all the fears and doubts. The boundaries we perceive around us often exist only in our minds. True freedom comes when we learn to see beyond the visible, when we realize that our soul is capable of soaring above earthly cares and fears. If this story has made you reflect on your own boundaries, if it has ignited in you a desire to seek answers and overcome your fears, I invite you to subscribe to my channel so that together we can continue on this journey toward truth. Every click, every comment becomes a part of the vast tapestry we weave together, exploring the depths of our consciousness and the mysterious realms that lie beyond the familiar. Thus, my story, full of secrets, fear, and an insatiable thirst for knowledge, draws to a close. But remember, every story is just the beginning of a new path. Our boundaries are as mutable as we are. And if you are ready to take the risk, if you are prepared to open your heart to the unknown, then step forward boldly, for it is beyond the borders of the familiar that the answers to life's most important questions hide. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Subscribe, hit like, and may every step you take lead you to light and true freedom. May this story inspire you to embark on your own quest and help you understand that behind every fear might lie the source of endless strength and wisdom. The world around us is full of mysteries, and only the brave dare to look them in the eye. May your path be illuminated by the light of truth, and every encounter be a step toward understanding the great mystery of existence. I, Victoria, will forever remain your guide in this realm between worlds, ready to share with you all the revelations that my further journey brings. Remember, true strength lies not in the absence of fear, but in the ability to move forward in spite of it. May the boundaries you see dissolve before the radiance of your soul, and every new dawn become the beginning of an amazing story, full of hope, love, and boundless wisdom. And so, when the first ray of the sun touched the horizon, I felt within me a new sensation, a feeling of freedom and acceptance. In this world, where darkness and light intertwine, I found my truth. May your hearts also open to new wonders, and every obstacle become merely a step on the path to a great discovery. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, the truth is always near, if only you dare to see it. Until next time, dear friends, and may your journey be as thrilling and endless as my own story of crossing the border between worlds. The end. Subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and click the bell so you won't miss any more chilling tales. If you think you know all there is about fear, get ready. What happened in this forest will forever change your idea of nightmares. Deep in the heart of an ancient forest, where the darkness is so thick that even the moonlight struggles to pierce the dense canopy of centuries-old trees, our story begins. It is here, on a long-forgotten trail shunned even by the bravest souls, where every rustle of leaves might signal the step of an unknown entity, that events unfold capable of paralyzing even the most daring adventurers with fear. Locals call this forest the Forest of Shadows, for it hides secrets that no one dares speak of, whether day or night. This is the tale of a mysterious stranger who appeared many years ago on the outskirts of a small American town. No one knew where he came from, or what he sought within these remote woods. With his arrival, strange events began to occur, and the forest seemed to awaken from a long slumber filled with ancient curses and sinister legends. On that fateful night, when the moon was full and the stars glimmered like the eyes of otherworldly beings, the stranger stepped onto a path leading deep into the forbidden forest. A heavy mist enveloped the woods, like a dense blanket, concealing every path, every twist of the trees, and every minute detail of nature. Every tree here had its own story, every stone its own pain, and every rustle a warning to those who dared to approach. For centuries, this forest had been a place where the realms of the living and the dead intermingled, a place where past and present were woven together into one unbreakable knot. In a remote corner of the forest stood an old cabin, about which rumors circulated that the spirit of an ancient shaman, cursed for his dark rituals, resided there. The locals believed that this cabin was the center of mystical forces that attracted all that was connected to the otherworld. And so, on that fateful night, the stranger, whose origins remained unknown, approached this cursed dwelling, carrying not only an enigmatic secret, but also the seal of an ancient curse that grew ever more entwined with the fabric of the forest. With each of his steps, the stranger was tall and gaunt, his face hidden beneath dark, unkempt hair, and his eyes seemed to glow with a sinister inner fire. He moved silently, as if merging with the night's darkness, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the stillness. In his gait, one could sense not only determination, but also deep sorrow, as if he was searching for something long lost, something that could bring solace to his tormented soul. Soon he reached the edge of the ancient forest, where a narrow path led into the heart of the gloom. Here, at the crossroads of worlds, the forest opened its arms as if inviting the stranger to partake in an ancient ritual performed long before civilization's rise. The wind rustled through the branches, creating a foreboding chorus, and it seemed that nature itself whispered to him, "You are already here." The stranger paused, listening to voices emanating from the depths of the thicket. His eyes widened with the realization that the forest was not merely silent, but was watching his every move, like a living being awakened by an age-old curse. With the first slivers of moonlight, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Ahead, along the narrow trail, a fleeting shadow darted by, swift and elusive, as if the very air condensed around it. The stranger stopped and peered into the darkness, trying to discern the shape that appeared to be part of the forest itself. The shadow vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only an echo of rustling leaves and a strange feeling of impending menace. With every step, the forest grew ever more ominous. The trees seemed to close in around him, forming a labyrinth with no escape. Underfoot, brittle leaves creaked, and the air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and something indefinable, a smell that defied description, a fragrance of ancient sorrow and bitter memories. Suddenly, he heard a soft, almost imperceptible whisper coming from all around. Voices, like cries for help, mingled with deep, guttural roars, as if ancient beings were struggling to break through the veil of reality. The stranger froze, realizing that his presence had not gone unnoticed. He tried to locate the source of the sound, but the darkness and thick fog obscured everything, transforming every noise into an even more sinister harbinger of danger. "Who's there?" he called, though no answer came. Only the wind repeated his words, as if mocking his fear. At that moment, he understood that the forest itself was the keeper of secrets and pains accumulated over the ages. Every sound, every movement around him was an echo of ancient rituals, long forgotten by time, yet never completely erased from this place. Pressing on, he came upon a circle of ancient stones, overgrown with moss and lichen. At the center of the circle stood a stone altar, upon which were carved symbols incomprehensible to an ordinary man. The stranger felt a chill run down his spine. These symbols seemed strangely familiar, as if he had seen them in dreams long forgotten, but hauntingly real. He knelt down and began to whisper softly, words that seemed to emerge intuitively from deep within him, as if his very soul knew that these utterances were the key to unlocking the ancient mystery hidden at the heart of the forest. The night deepened, and the forest around him grew more alive, as if awakening from a long slumber. The stranger, buoyed by an inexplicable force, continued to recite mysterious words, and the earth beneath him began to vibrate softly in response. The ancient stones, as if stirred by his voice, started to glow with a cold, bluish light, a light that bathed the circle in an eerie, mesmerizing beauty. The glow spread, creating the illusion that time itself had slowed, and that past and present had merged into one. Suddenly, from the darkness emerged the figure of a woman, clad in ancient garments adorned with the very symbols he had just seen on the stones. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes shone with a hypnotic, otherworldly light. She approached him like the very embodiment of the night, and in a soft, almost ethereal voice, she said, "You have come seeking the truth, but know this, the truth is not something you can bear." Her words cut through the silence like a knife. The stranger felt a chill pierce his heart, and in that instant he realized that his presence here was no mere accident. He was chosen, a destined participant in an ancient rite that would reveal the secrets of the Forest of Shadows, and perhaps alter the course of history. The woman, whose appearance was both beautiful and terrifying, extended her hand, inviting him to follow her deeper into the woods. They proceeded along a narrow path illuminated only by the flickering light of mysterious stones scattered along the way. All around them, the forest seemed to come alive. The trees leaned in as if to better hear their whispers, and unseen creatures glided among the branches, watching every move. The stranger felt the stirring of ancient forces as his mind filled with visions of the past, images of suffering, sacrifices, and ancient curses that had left an indelible mark on this sacred place. Further along, they reached the base of an enormous oak, which had stood as the guardian of the forest for centuries. Its mighty branches stretched skyward, as if trying to quench the thirst of ancient spirits, and its bark was inscribed with mysterious signs conveying messages from long-forgotten civilizations. The woman stopped before the oak and said, "Here lies the truth. This is the place where the paths of past and future converge, a place where every drop of blood spilled on this land has left its mark in the eternal cycle of life and death." The stranger approached, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. On the ancient oak, scenes from other worlds were carved into the bark. Warriors battling unseen enemies, victims sacrificed to appease the spirits of the forest, and images that invoked both horror and admiration. Every line and symbol seemed to breathe, as if telling its own story, a story of pain, love, and an inexorable destiny. At that moment, the woman raised her hands, and from the oak emanated a soft yet persistent melody. This music was unlike anything the stranger had ever heard before. Within it were echoes of ancient rituals, forgotten incantations, and prayers addressed to the forces capable of shattering the very fabric of reality. The stranger felt his body trembling, and his mind filled with visions. He saw battles among ancient gods, heard the laments of the fallen, and felt the earth pulsing in sync with this primordial rhythm. "Are you ready to know what this forest hides?" the woman asked, her voice like the rustle of leaves in a midnight wind. The stranger, realizing that there was no turning back, nodded, even as fear and doubt churned within him. He understood that ahead lay the unknown, but that feeling was interwoven with the burning desire to uncover a mystery he had dreamed of all his life. The path ahead led them ever deeper into the forest, where the darkness became almost tangible, and the air was thick with ancient incantations. Step by step, the stranger neared the heart of the Forest of Shadows, a place where, as the legend said, time lost its power, and the souls of the dead found new life in a maelstrom of magic and curses. Before long, they reached a vast lake, its waters as black as tar, reflecting nothing but the darkness of the night. Surrounding the lake were ancient ruins, the remnants of what once might have been a great temple or palace, dedicated to the worship of nature's forces. Amid the shattered columns and leaning arches, one could sense the presence of something both sinister and primordial. The woman halted at the water's edge, and gazing into the unfathomable depths, said, "Here, in the depths of the lake, lies the heart of the curse. Here reside the souls of those who dared disturb the forest's slumber, and their pain still echoes in every sound, in every rustle of the wind." The stranger listened intently to her words, feeling as though his mind was being filled with an indescribable mixture of terror and reverence for the power that dwelt here. Suddenly, the surface of the lake began to ripple, and from its depths emerged a figure, first faintly visible, then gradually taking shape. It was the silhouette of an old man, with long, flowing gray hair and piercing eyes, filled with ancient wisdom and unending sorrow. Slowly, he stepped onto the shore, leaving watery traces behind him, as if even the flow of time bowed to his will. The old man spoke in a soft, almost whispered tone that resonated as if from another realm. "You have come here, stranger, to learn the truth, but be warned. The truth you seek may shadow you from within. This forest, this land, they keep the memories of the dead and the cursed, and only the chosen can bear the weight of this wisdom." His words, laden with ancient grief, stirred within the stranger a blend of horror and an insatiable desire to know more. Under the old man's guidance, the stranger immersed himself in the study of ancient rituals, inscribed upon stones and engraved into the very heart of the forest. Every word, every metaphor carried a fragment of the great mystery that linked this world with the beyond. The old man explained how the forest had once been a sacred place of worship for the gods of nature, how rituals were performed here to appease the forces governing life and death. But over time, these rituals transformed into curses, and worship morphed into a thirst for vengeance. One ancient manuscript discovered among the ruins spoke of the Great Fall, a moment when the forest, weary of endless sacrifices, had risen in defiance and turned its back on humanity. Since then, the souls of the fallen had wandered these lands in search of rest, their voices echoing in every rustle of leaves and every creak of a falling branch. The stranger learned that he was the last of a lineage chosen to restore the balance, to break the cycle of curses, and bring salvation, even if that salvation was wrought in cruelty. Every step and every word spoken by the old man filled the stranger with a sense of inevitability. He understood that his fate was inextricably linked with this forest, and that unraveling the secrets hidden in its depths might be the key not only to saving his own soul, but also to redeeming countless others long forgotten by time. In his mind, visions of ancient rituals and battles where good and evil intertwined flashed before his eyes, each clash of sword and every drop of spilled blood resonating with the hearts of those who had lost faith in a bright future. It was a moonless night, and the forest seemed even more foreboding than before. Together with the old man, the stranger arrived at a sacred circle where time itself appeared to have come to a standstill. Amid the ancient symbols and runic inscriptions, he was to perform the final ritual, a ritual that would sever the chains of the ancient curse hanging over the forest of shadows. The old man raised his hands to the sky and began reciting incantations that reverberated throughout the clearing. His voice, strong and resolute, filled the space with a potent energy that made even time tremble. The stranger, mirroring his mentor's actions, repeated the words, feeling as if ancient forces were infusing every cell of his body. This ritual was not merely an attempt to restore balance. It was a challenge to the very powers of darkness, a defiant call to bring light back to a forsaken land. In an instant, the ground beneath them groaned, and the air filled with a cacophony of sounds, as if thousands of voices began speaking in unison. At that moment, the forest burst into life in all its eerie splendor. The ancient trees murmured their tales of sorrow. Unseen entities stirred in a vortex of primordial magic and curses around them. The stranger felt his mind overwhelmed with visions of the dead, their anguished faces and plaintive cries demanding redemption. The old man, nearly overcome by the battle, spoke in a quiet, yet determined voice. "It is time. Your soul is the key to our liberation. Let go of your fear and allow the light to enter this world, or the darkness will engulf us all." With those words resonating through the chaos, the stranger, gripped by a turbulent mix of fear, grief, and hope, rose and proclaimed the final words of the incantation, a declaration that each utterance might be his last, yet also the promise of deliverance for all trapped within the curse of the forest of shadows. All around them, a struggle ensued, a battle not for mere survival, but one pitting ancient forces against one another. The forest, as if alive, resisted the attempt to shatter its curse. The wind roared, the trees creaked and bent as if trying to cast off the burden of centuries of suffering, and the earth beneath their feet quivered as though defying the new order. With each passing second, the stranger felt the forest's forces clawing at his mind, striving to seize his soul and turn it into another link in the chain of ancient curses. Visions of terror and sorrow flashed by in a gruesome kaleidoscope, causing his heart to beat wildly. He saw the visages of fallen warriors, broken hopes, and heard the agonized laments that shattered the silence of the night. Yet, despite the overwhelming might of these primordial powers, he remained steadfast. His voice, brimming with resolve and courage, rang out above the chaos, striving to dispel the encroaching darkness. The old man, weakened by the relentless struggle, could only murmur words of support, reminding the stranger of his mission. "You must believe that light can triumph over darkness," echoed the old man's faint voice, and gathering the last reserves of his will, the stranger cried out as if addressing every forsaken soul of the forest. I believe light will prevail. Let the curse be lifted, and may the forest find peace. His words, imbued with sincere faith and desperate hope, reverberated across the clearing, and for a moment it seemed as if nature itself paused in anticipation of what would come next. Moments stretched into an eternity as the battle reached its climax. Unseen forces, determined to extinguish hope and smother the light, began to weave around the stranger, an illusion where past and future merged into a single, inescapable whole. He saw the faces of his ancestors, heard their voices calling him to greatness, and felt the strength of a spirit passed down through generations. In that decisive instant, the forest appeared to yield to a new order. The stones, the ancient runes, and the symbols carved into the bark of trees burst forth in radiant light, reflecting hope and the power of renewal. The stranger felt his body suffused with newfound energy, and gathering his remaining strength, he uttered the final incantation, a declaration that would forever sever the ancient curse's hold. Then, as if by magic, the howling wind fell silent, and a profound stillness descended, a stillness so deep that it seemed the entire universe held its breath. Slowly, the dark clouds dispersed, yielding to the gentle, warm glow of the approaching dawn. The forest, freed from centuries of torment, began to awaken to a new life. The ancient voices that had long languished in oblivion quieted, giving way to the melody of a new day. The old man, smiling with wisdom and peace, looked at the stranger and softly said, "You have done the impossible. Your faith, your determination, they have freed this forest from its age-old curse. Now, the Forest of Shadows shall become the Forest of Renewal, a place where the memory of the past coexists in harmony with hope for the future." The stranger, surveying the forest reborn, felt the invisible bonds that connected him to this place strengthen, filling him with a sense of belonging to something grand and eternal. Days, weeks, and months passed, yet the legend of the Forest of Shadows lived on. The nearby town, once gripped by fear and distrust of the unknown, began to change. Its residents, once wary of the mysterious woods, now sensed that near them lay a source of power and wisdom. The ancient curses, long forgotten by time, gave way to a new beginning. The stranger, now a symbol of liberation and transformation, departed, knowing that his journey was but a small chapter in the grand narrative inscribed in the eternal book of life. Still, the memory of that fateful night, and the time when the forest awakened with ancient voices, never faded. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the townsfolk gathered at the forest's edge to hear tales of how faith can conquer even the deepest darkness. These stories passed from one generation to the next, growing into legends that inspired heroic deeds and served as a reminder that even in the darkest corners, a spark of light may always be found. The stranger left behind numerous messages, records, and diaries detailing his struggle against the ancient forces, his visions, and revelations. These writings became a true legacy, guiding future generations to understand that every living being, be it man or forest spirit, has the right to freedom, to renewal, and to light. Thus, the Forest of Shadows, once a place of curses and suffering, transformed into a sacred sanctuary where ancient mysteries found peaceful resolution. The story of the Forest of Shadows is not merely a tale of battling evil. It is a narrative of the eternal quest for truth, of how fear and despair can yield to faith, hope, and love. Anyone who hears this story feels something ancient stir within them, a connection to the very essence of existence. The forest that was once filled with malice and curses now stands as a haven where one can find solace and the understanding that even in the deepest darkness, a light can ignite. The stranger, whose journey became a symbol of transformation, proved that even a single individual, if brave enough to believe in miracles, can change the course of events, shatter the barriers between worlds, and usher in a new chapter in the eternal chronicle of life. His struggle against ancient forces, his victory over the darkness, and the subsequent rebirth of the forest have become a legend that lives on in the hearts of people, inspiring them to act and reminding them that truth always conquers falsehood and that light always dispels darkness. Thus concludes this terrifying yet astonishingly inspiring tale of the Forest of Shadows. Today, whenever you hear the rustle of leaves or the whisper of the night wind, carrying echoes of ancient voices, remember that every living being has the power to change its destiny if it dares to step into the unknown. And if you're ready to uncover even more secrets, to learn how ancient forces continue to live among us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share this story with your friends. May this tale remind us all that each one of us is a spark of light, capable of banishing the darkness, and that even in the most dreadful corners of the world, hope for a better future remains. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time and space, through fear and hope, and through the eternal quest for truth. This story is but one of countless legends hidden in the depths of time and space. The Forest of Shadows continues to live, breathe, and whisper its ancient tales to those brave enough to listen. May the memory of those who have overcome their fears and found the light be eternal, and may each new generation boldly step onto the path where darkness yields to light, and every drop of blood and tear transforms into a symbol of strength and rebirth. On those rare nights when the stars shine especially bright and the world seems enveloped in magic, the forest awakens once again. The rustling of branches, the gentle whisper of leaves, and the echoes of ancient voices remind us that we are not alone. In every corner, in every sound and shadow, there lies a story capable of transforming us. Whether you are an adventurer, a lover of mystery, or simply someone seeking answers to life's questions, the Forest of Shadows is ever ready to reveal its secrets to those who dare to believe in miracles. Our story is only beginning, and perhaps in the future, we will learn even more about the ancient forces that hide behind every shadow and in every whisper of the wind. But today, as morning has replaced night and the forest fills with a new light, we remain filled with gratitude and hope. Gratitude for those who dared to step into this world, and hope that even in the darkest corners of the universe, there will always be room for light and love. May the Forest of Shadows forever be a symbol that each of us is capable of transformation, of conquering fear, and of pursuing the truth, wherever it may lead us. And remember, no matter how dark the night may be, dawn is inevitable, and a new day always follows the darkness. End of story. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video so that together we can embrace the power of ancient legends and find light even in the most sinister corners of our world. Before you dive into this scary story, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like it. It helps us create new scary stories. In the foggy twilight of an autumn evening, a group of border guards, whose lives were usually filled with routine checks, patrolling the border, and handling minor incidents, found themselves caught in a tangled web of mystical events. The forest that separated the two countries was always shrouded in mystery, and even the most experienced border officers sensed that something unfathomable lurked deep within its bounds. It was here, under the starry sky, where every shadow seemed alive, that the story began, a story that would forever change the fate of these men and women. The shift commander, Major Alexander Romanov, was a man of iron composure and a cool mind. But on that ominous evening, he felt an unusual sense of unease, as if an unseen hand was trying to grab his throat, making his heart pound erratically. He gathered his subordinates on a small clearing, explaining that a sudden meeting was necessary. All voices fell silent, and the air grew heavy with tension. Each one of them understood that the forest held secrets not meant for ordinary mortals. If you think that everything beyond our checkpoints follows the rules of ordinary logic, Romanov said, then think again. Tonight, we will encounter something you have never seen before. Stay alert, and do not let your guard down. His words, spoken in a cold and determined voice, gripped every listener. At that very moment, as the last ray of the setting sun disappeared, the boundary between the ordinary world and the realm of mysteries began to blur. As the border guards ventured deeper into the forest, they noticed that the familiar path became increasingly unrecognizable, and the trees around them seemed to watch their every move. The faint light of the moon filtered through the dense branches, casting ominous shadows upon the ground. At first, they assumed it was merely the play of light and wind, but soon they began to notice strange marks carved into the tree bark. What initially appeared as random scratches now resembled mysterious symbols, runes left by someone who knew of the existence of parallel worlds. One of the guards, the young and still inexperienced Ivan Sokolov, approached one such tree. He observed that the symbols resembled ancient runes, and his mind flashed back to warnings he had once heard from his grandfather. His grandfather used to tell him stories of the ancient forest spirits, and how they could meddle in human affairs if their rest was disturbed. A chill ran down Sokolov's spine, and he quickly stepped back, as if knowing that his actions might awaken something that had long lain dormant in the forest. At that same moment, Senior Officer Alexei Gromov, while observing these peculiarities, felt his mind drift into fragments of ancient legends about forest spirits and curses. He noticed that the forest around them began to change its appearance. The trees seemed to thicken and form a labyrinth with no apparent escape. His heart pounded with dread, yet duty compelled him to continue forward, despite the ominous signs of nature. Deep within the forest, something unimaginable awaited them. The soft rustle of leaves suddenly turned into a rhythmic thumping, resembling the sound of footsteps, and before long, the sounds grew ever closer. The guards halted, holding their breath, as from the shadows of the trees slowly emerged a figure. It resembled a human, yet its limbs were unnaturally elongated, and its eyes glowed with a cold blue light. The figure appeared suspended between worlds, its gaze penetrating each person and evoking a profound sense of despair. "Who are you?" Romanov asked, striving to maintain his composure, though an awkward tremor betrayed his voice. But the answer did not come from the figure. It came from deep within the forest, echoing over the clearing. "You have violated the border, and now you must pay for your insolence." The words resonated as if spoken by the forest itself, and each syllable made the blood in their veins freeze. The following hours became a true test of the guards' endurance and courage. The forest around them seemed to come alive, filled with ghostly apparitions and eerie sounds. Every path led them further away from the familiar, plunging them into an atmosphere of inexplicable magic and ancient rituals. Romanov ordered them to keep formation and not to retreat, but in each soldier's eyes was a fear of the unknown. One night, when the sky was streaked with the purple hues of the northern lights, they discovered an abandoned hut standing at the forest's edge. The hut looked as if it had once been inhabited by people, but now it was almost entirely consumed by moss and lichen. Hanging on its door was an old lock, covered in runes similar to those they had seen on the trees. Inside, an unnatural silence prevailed, broken only by the creaking of old wooden planks underfoot. Believing that this shelter might hold answers to the strange phenomena, the border guards stepped inside. The hut's room was furnished with antique furniture, and on a table lay a faded leather-bound book, adorned with intricate patterns, reminiscent of interwoven branches. Gromov, who had always been fond of literature and myths, cautiously opened the book and began to study its contents. The text recounted tales of people who had tried to cross the threshold between worlds, and described how the forest guarding the border punished those who dared disturb its peace. Each page of the book radiated an ancient energy, as if the words themselves were coming to life, telling of the grim fates of their predecessors. The book spoke of a ritual capable of opening a portal to another realm, a realm where the spirits of ancestors and demons of oblivion dwelled. According to the legends, this ritual was performed on a special night, when darkness and light merged into one, and it was precisely on such nights that the boundary between worlds became exceptionally thin. The guards began to realize that their patrolling of this border was not mere chance. Someone or something had directed them here so that they might witness, or perhaps even take part in, this ancient rite. Major Romanov read aloud one of the pages, his voice trembling with awe as it echoed through the empty room. "Be cautious, for the forest knows your soul, and whoever dares to step beyond the threshold may forever lose their connection to reality." Those words struck a chord deep within each of them. At that very moment, a strange noise sounded outside the hut, as if footsteps were creeping up to the door, and everyone froze, sensing the approach of an unknown peril. At dawn the following morning, barely as light broke through, the guards decided to continue their journey, in hopes of finding the source of the strange phenomena. The hut was left behind, a silent witness to the events of the previous night, while the forest around them grew ever more foreboding. The sun tried to break through the thick clouds, but its rays appeared pale and cold, as if coming from another world. The group moved along a narrow trail, when suddenly their eyes were drawn to the glimmer of something unusual, shimmering between the trees. It was an amulet, hanging from a branch, crafted from ancient metal, and decorated with symbols they had already seen on the hut and on the trees. Gromov carefully picked up the amulet and examined it, feeling an unknown energy pulsating from within. "This amulet is the key to our mystery," he whispered, as if listening to the voices of forebears. "We must understand what it means." The border guards split into two groups. One continued along the trail, while the other halted to study the discovered signs and ritual items. Even Sokolov, still shaken by the previous events, could not take his eyes off the amulet, feeling that within it lay the fate of their entire shift. His thoughts intermingled with ancient legends of cursed lands and the mysterious promises of the forest. Soon, they reached a small clearing where rune-like symbols were etched into the stones. Here, time itself seemed to stand still. Against the backdrop of this inexplicable mysticism, a picture began to form. The forest was trying to tell them something, to impart ancient wisdom and warn of impending danger. Gromov recalled the words from the book and realized that the ritual described in the ancient records might already be in progress. Perhaps someone had deliberately used the border between worlds as a portal, and now long-forgotten forces were beginning to awaken. A sense of impending threat gripped them all. With every step, the forest thickened, and the shadows grew ever more sinister. That mysterious voice they had heard during the night resounded once again, but this time it seemed closer. The time has come. The boundary blurs. You can no longer turn back. The words echoed across the clearing, momentarily robbing the guards of the ability to think clearly. They had to steel themselves to face the approaching evil, an evil that seemed poised to engulf their souls and carry them away into the abyss of ancient curses. What followed happened in a whirlwind. The forest around them seemed to come alive, as if it were a living entity governed by an unseen will. The trees creaked and whispered, and the very ground beneath their feet appeared to pulsate in rhythm with their hearts. The border, which until now had been nothing more than a line on a map, had acquired a new, sinister meaning. It was not only a territorial demarcation, but also a spiritual threshold, a passage between worlds inhabited by both the living and the supernatural. Major Romanov made a fateful decision. We must reach that place where the barrier between worlds is thinnest in order to understand what is happening here. Stay together, and let no fear overcome you. His voice brimmed with resolve, and though fear lurked in the eyes of his men, they followed him without hesitation. Step by step, they advanced toward the mysterious place where the forest opened into a small clearing, bathed in moonlight. Here, time seemed to slow, and the air was filled with an eerie murmur. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone pillar, entwined with vines and covered with mysterious symbols. This place was the key to understanding the events unfolding before them. Nearby, as if deliberately placed, lay the remnants of ritual objects, bowls, mirrors, and figurines, crafted from an unknown material that shimmered in the moonlight. At that moment, Gromov felt his mind flooded with visions, images of people long gone who had taken part in rituals, twisted figures striving to overcome the barrier between worlds. He was convinced these visions were messages, warnings that the forest did not forgive mistakes. In his eyes flickered fragments of a past where even his own ancestors might have faced similar ordeals. Every image was laden with pain, terror, and the inevitability of fate. Suddenly, from the center of the clearing emerged a deep, almost hypnotic voice. "Welcome, brave souls. You have crossed the threshold, and now you must confront the truth hidden beyond the veil of worlds. There is no place here for the weak. Only true seekers can embrace the light of knowledge or be forever consumed by darkness." The voice penetrated to the very depths of their souls, leaving behind only a cold echo. Their hearts pounded faster as they sensed unseen forces gathering around them, as if preparing for an invisible battle. Romanov ordered everyone to take defensive positions around the stone pillar, seeking any measure of protection from the impending, indescribable threat. Every moment in this place could be their last, and all understood that their fates were now intertwined with this ancient site, a place where time and space danced an unimaginable waltz of light and darkness. At the moment when the tension reached its zenith, the forest stirred with such intensity that it seemed nature itself was revolting against the violation of its laws. From deep within the earth, narrow streams of dark energy rose, wrapping themselves around the stone pillar and penetrating the hearts of all present. The voices of ancestors and ancient spirits filled the air, merging with the cold wind and the whisper of the leaves. Even Sokolov, still clutching the amulet, felt an unfamiliar energy seize his body. Time seemed to stretch out, and visions of distant epochs filled his mind, visions of ancient tribes performing rituals in honor of the forces of nature. He saw men and women, clad in animal skins and adorned with primitive ornaments, standing in a circle with their hands raised to the sky, calling upon the gods for aid. These images were full of reverence and terror alike, a reminder that any attempt to interfere with the natural order could lead to catastrophe. Meanwhile, Romanov, gritting his teeth in an effort to maintain control, found it increasingly difficult to deny that the forces now awakened surpassed anything he had ever known. We cannot turn away from this power, he thought grimly, or we shall remain prisoners of its curse forever. His words, filled with both sorrow and resolve, echoed into the night, merging with the ancient incantations that rose in unison with the heartbeat of the earth. The amulet in Sokolov's hand began to radiate a brilliant, almost blinding light. With each pulsation, the very air around them thickened, and space itself seemed to warp, as if someone were beginning to inscribe invisible patterns upon it. The light from the amulet gradually changed color, from a cold blue to a sinister red, with every new hue promising an inevitable retribution for the laws that had been broken. From the center of the clearing, a shadow emerged, a vast, nearly tangible darkness, as though the very embodiment of night had taken form. It advanced slowly but inexorably toward the border guards, each step resonating with echoes from a time when the world was young and nature's laws were both severe and immutable. The shadow's voice, low and thunderous, intoned, "You have dared disturb the peace of the ancestors, and now you shall pay the price." Every word seeped into their beings, as if life itself were beginning to fade from their bodies. Gromov, summoning all his resolve, attempted to deflect the attack of these unseen forces. "We are not here to offer sacrifices," he cried out. "We are guardians of order and peace. We call upon you, return balance to our world." His challenge resounded across the clearing like a battle cry, directed at the ancient darkness. Yet the answer came swiftly and mercilessly. The shadow drew so near that one could distinguish its twisted features, distorted faces, lifeless eyes, and hands stretched out in a dreadful gesture, as if pleading for help or meting out punishment, at the moment when it seemed that the forces of light and darkness were about to clash in an inevitable confrontation. The border guards felt that the forest itself had become a battleground for an ancient struggle. Every dewdrop, every branch, every leaf bore silent witness to a conflict that had raged through the ages, a battle between ancient rituals and the unyielding will of the ancestors. Seeing that normal orders and discipline could not stave off the impending doom, Romanov was forced to call upon the very traditions his father had taught him, age-old customs passed down through generations. He recalled the old words of his childhood. Within every human heart burns a flame capable of dispelling darkness. Only true faith and courage can conquer the curse of time. With these words, he retrieved from his pocket a small amulet, a gift from his mother, and clutched it tightly as he exclaimed, "Spirit of the ancestors, hear our call and grant us the strength to protect our world from destruction." In that instant, the air around them filled with golden sparks, as if the universe itself were responding to his plea. The forces of light, gathered in those ancient artifacts, began to break through the darkness like the first rays of dawn shattering the night's gloom. The shadow, weakened by this sudden burst of brilliance, groaned as its edges began to blur, dissolving like water streaming off a stone. The struggle was not merely physical. It was a battle of spirits. Every guard felt their very soul tested, a struggle between fear and hope, between despair and the belief in a brighter future. Ivan Sokolov, holding the amulet, sensed his fear giving way to determination. Closing his eyes, he remembered all of his grandfather's tales of heroic deeds and of faith that could overcome any obstacle. When he reopened his eyes, he saw that the amulet now glowed with a soft blue radiance, a light that seemed capable of reaching even the darkest corners of the forest. Together, Romanov and his comrades, driven by duty and the ancient wisdom passed down to them, began to chant the old incantations, words that appeared to rise from the very depths of their souls. These chants, imbued with the power of their ancestors, resonated like the call of ancient spirits, calming the forest and restoring balance between the worlds. Each uttered word echoed powerfully, confirming its authority over the circumstances that had been thrust upon them. Suddenly, the forest shuddered, and time seemed to pause for a heartbeat. It was as if every event, every trial and hope merged into one singular moment when light and darkness clashed. The stone pillar at the center of the clearing, the source of the mysterious rituals, began to shine with an almost blinding light that illuminated the entire area like a beacon. The shadow, unable to withstand the brilliance, began to recede, disintegrating into fine particles that dissolved into the night air. At last, the forest seemed to reclaim its ancient silence, now imbued with the sense of purification and renewal. The border guards, feeling that the ordeal was over, exchanged looks that revealed not only exhaustion, but also a deep understanding of the events they had survived. They knew that that fateful night would forever leave its mark on their hearts, and the lessons learned in their confrontation with otherworldly forces would accompany them throughout their lives. When the first rays of dawn cut through the darkness, the weary and drained border guards emerged from the forest. They understood that what they had experienced was not merely a brush with the inexplicable, but a sign that the boundaries between worlds were always delicate, and that one should not cross them without due necessity. Each of them returned to their duties with a newfound understanding of the nature of reality, realizing that the world around them was filled with more mysteries than one could ever imagine. Major Romanov, glancing back at the dark memories of that night, quietly murmured, "We are the guardians of not only the border between nations, but also the boundary between worlds. Let this night serve as a reminder that our mission is to preserve the balance, even if it means confronting the most ancient and powerful forces. His words rang out like a solemn oath, a promise made to himself and to the world that no darkness could ever extinguish the light, as long as faith burned in the hearts of men. Each border guard carried within them a fragment of that mystical experience. Even Sokolov, who had once trembled at the mere thought of the unknown, now viewed the world with a deeper understanding. He had learned that even in the bleakest places, one could find a spark of light strong enough to fend off the darkness. His amulet, now softly glowing with a bluish radiance, became for him a symbol of hope and inner strength, a constant reminder that every trial is but a temporary obstacle on the path to truth. In the weeks that followed, life at the border gradually returned to its routine, yet none of the guards ever forgot that night. They continued to patrol the forest, aware that it was not only a place of natural beauty, but also a keeper of ancient secrets, secrets capable of stirring both the deepest fears and the most profound hopes. The forest had ceased to be a location for routine checks. It had become a living entity speaking in a language of symbols and age-old legends, audible only in the silent depths of night. Over time, the legend of that night spread among the border guards. The new recruits listened with reverence to the tales of their seniors, and the stories of the shadow cutting across the night sky, and of the ancient stone pillar glowing with mysterious light, turned into parables passed down through generations. In the hearts of all who had ever set foot near that forest, the understanding took root that the boundary between worlds is not merely measured in kilometers. It stretches deep into the very soul, and one day you might have to decide on which side you will stand. The threshold of a new dawn, the story of that night when the forest came alive and revealed its ancient secrets, became a symbol for all those daring enough to venture into the unknown. The border guards who had survived that mystical experience continued to carry the light of knowledge into the darkest corners of the world, reminding everyone that fear can be overcome when the flame of courage burns within the heart. Every time they passed through the forest, they recalled the sinister shadows, the whispering voices of ancient spirits, and the fact that even a single, resolute cry in the dark can awaken powers capable of altering the course of history. Remember this: always be prepared for the moment when darkness might try to claim your light. And if you ever find yourself standing at the crossroads between worlds, do not be afraid to take that step forward. For beyond the mundane lies a truth that can illuminate even the gloomiest recesses of our souls. We hope this mystical saga has stirred within you an interest in the secrets and unexplored realms that surround us. If you enjoyed the tale, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Who knows? Perhaps your voice will help open a new chapter in this endless story, where the boundaries between worlds fade, and light and darkness merge into one. Before you dive into this scary story, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like it. It helps us create new scary stories. In the cold, pre-dawn gloom of the forest, where darkness merged with the first glimmers of day, a group of people, exhausted from endless searches for a better life, made their way through the dense undergrowth. Their faces, worn by a long and perilous journey, reflected both hope and despair. These migrants, having left behind their shattered homelands, dreamed of a new beginning, yet their path led them through a forest the locals called the Forest of Forgotten Shadows. A long, narrow trail, winding between ancient trees that seemed as old as time, appeared as if drawn by an unseen hand of destiny. The rustle of leaves underfoot sounded like the whisper of times long past, and the soft howl of the wind resembled the beat of a heart cursed never to be forgotten. In this forest, at the border between the world of the living and that beyond, every tree and every crack in the bark concealed its own secret. "We're almost there," murmured Nazar, the group's leader, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting to see something inexplicable. His voice trembled, yet determination burned in his eyes. Behind him followed Liuba, Amin, and several others, each bearing a story full of pain and loss. They knew that crossing this border might be their last chance at a new life, but the forest held many secrets, and none knew which mystical forces were stirring within its depths. "Do you hear that rustling?" asked Liuba, clutching an old amulet that, by legend, was meant to protect her from evil spirits. Around them, sounds emerged, almost imperceptible footsteps. Perhaps it was merely the wind, or maybe something else. Among the branches, shadows flickered, casting strange silhouettes on the ground. Yemi noticed that one of the shadows moved too deliberately, as if it were watching them. The migrants halted, straining to hear the forest's whisper, and in that moment it became clear. They were not alone. Suddenly, from behind a thicket, a muffled yet firm voice emerged, seeming to come from the very depths of the earth. "You have disturbed the peace of these ancient lands, and now the forest demands a toll." The words echoed among the trees, chilling the blood in their veins. Nazar clenched his fist, trying to remain calm, though fear flashed in his eyes. "Who are you?" he asked, even as he sensed the answer in the depths of his soul. There was no reply, only an increasing rustle, as if thousands of unseen footsteps were drawing near. The migrants stood, encircled by a darkness that now felt as thick and alive as the very curse of forgotten times. Night draped the forest, and moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, creating ominous patterns on the damp ground. Realizing they had no time for lingering doubts, the migrants set up a temporary shelter on a small clearing surrounded by ancient oaks, whose branches intertwined in a silent, eternal embrace. In the hush of the night, every sound took on a special meaning. Seated by the campfire, Liuba watched the flickering tongues of flame when she suddenly felt a chill creeping up her back. Turning around, she saw, amid the darkness between the trees, a figure resembling a human, but not quite. The figure moved with a smooth, almost weightless gait, as if it floated above the ground, its eyes glowing with a cold blue light. "Who's there?" Liuba asked timidly, her voice trembling as she tried to stifle her fear. Yet no answer came. The figure only drew closer, its presence causing even the fire's light to waver, as if the flame itself was gripped by terror. "We seek no quarrel," declared Nazar, rising and attempting to show that he was ready for whatever might come. But his words dissolved into the night air, and the figure faded away, leaving only a faint glimmer that soon dimmed. It became apparent to everyone that the forest was testing their spirit. Amin, the youngest among them, recalled the stories told by the elders in his homeland, legends of wandering spirits of lost wayfarers who roamed the forest, seeking those who dared cross the boundary between worlds. Now, those legends seemed no longer mere tales, but a living reality, woven into the dark tapestry of the night. One by one, the migrants began to share their stories of past losses, and their hopes for a brighter future. These accounts, laden with bitterness and longing, helped unite them in the face of the unknown threat. Yet, with each passing minute, the forest grew ever more animated and demanding, reminding them that it neither forgets nor forgives. At dawn, as the sky began to blush with gentle pinks and purples, the migrants resolved to press on. They understood that crossing the border was not only a chance for a new life, but also a trial, demanding courage and unity. The morning brought an illusion of calm, yet an undercurrent of anxiety still beat within each of them. Along their path, they encountered an abandoned border outpost, once built to guard the territory, now long forsaken by man. The ruins, cloaked in moss and lichen, as if nature itself wished to erase the marks of human intrusion, bore strange symbols and inscriptions on their remnants, a warning carved in stone. Honor the memory of those who did not return. Nazar approached and examined the inscriptions when a strange glimmer caught his eye, emanating from beneath the rubble. With effort, he lifted a piece of stone to reveal a small niche in the wall. Inside lay a medallion, adorned with enigmatic runes that seemed to shimmer in the morning sun. Suddenly, the medallion trembled in his hands, and Nazar felt a cold wind brush against his spine, as if an invisible hand had touched his very soul. "This is a sign," Nazar whispered, his voice mingling wonder and fear as he gazed at the medallion. Liuba stepped closer. A sign of what? Fate? Or perhaps a curse? Nazar merely shrugged, unable to offer an answer. They decided to keep the medallion, believing it might be the key to unlocking the forest's mysteries. Their journey continued along a narrow path where every step resonated deeply within them. The forest seemed to come alive. Trees bent as though whispering ancient incantations, and the grass rustled as if preparing to reveal its story. Every stone, every twig seemed to carry memories of the past, of those who had once sought salvation in this eerie place. Night fell once again, and the group halted to rest. Yet the calm was deceptive. In the stillness of the night, strange sounds emerged, whispers not carried by the wind, but seemingly emanating from the earth itself. Amin, now accustomed to fear, began to softly recite the incantations taught by the elders of his childhood, hoping to shield the group from malevolent forces. But every word echoed back, as if another voice repeated them from the depths of the ground. "I feel as though we are being watched," Amin said, gazing into the darkness where the moon's light painted ghostly silhouettes. "Perhaps they aren't watching but summoning?" suggested Liuba, pressing the medallion to her chest, a symbol of both hope and warning. "We must keep moving," Nazar declared resolutely, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. "We have come too far to retreat. The border is our chance, and the forest is filled with mysteries we must unravel." And so, under the cloak of night, with ghostly voices of the past all around, they pressed on, unaware that every step drew them closer to the very heart of the mystical enigma. With every mile, the forest grew increasingly inexplicable. The branches seemed to change direction on their own, as if deliberately trying to lead unwelcome guests astray. The migrants increasingly sensed the presence of something supernatural, invisible, yet palpably ominous. In their dreams, images of ancient rituals, forgotten peoples, and mysterious creatures wandering the nocturnal expanses appeared. One night, as the moon reached high among the treetops, Liuba awoke with the unsettling feeling of being observed. She peered out of her tent's flap and saw a figure flickering in the dark. A slender, almost transparent form, as if crafted from the night itself. The figure drew near, its eyes igniting with a strange fire, full of sorrow and eternal grief. Have you come for me?" Lyuba whispered, feeling an icy chill permeate every cell of her body. The figure did not answer. Its gaze alone conveyed a deep connection to the ancient pain of this place. Suddenly, the medallion Lyuba had so carefully cherished burst into a soft, bluish glow, as if responding to the presence of the unseen entity. In that moment, she understood that her bond with this forest ran deeper than she had ever imagined. Hearing Lyuba's voice, Nizar rushed out of the tent to see what was happening. But when he reached her spot, only a faint glimmer remained in the darkness. A long suppressed fear awakened in him, a fear he had tried so hard to bury. He recalled the old legends warning that the forest safeguarded the souls of those who crossed the border, without having offered a final prayer of hope. "We must continue," Nizar said, his voice laced with apprehension. "It seems that answers await us deep within the forest." Thus began their journey along a path where every tree appeared to be a living witness of eras gone by. The road led them to ancient ruins, where time itself had frozen, and even the wind could not erase the memories of old. Here, among crumbling walls and fallen arches, the migrants found relics and artifacts, perhaps left behind by the inhabitants of these lands, in a desperate hope to protect their legacy from oblivion. Among these discoveries, they unearthed a diary, whose pages were filled with bizarre marks and entries chronicling tragic events of years past. The diary belonged to a man who had once tried to escape the horrors of war and found refuge in this very forest. But his writings soon devolved into frenzied scribbles, as if he sensed that something indescribable was stalking him through the night. "Listen," Nizar said, reading one of the pages aloud. "We have stepped onto forbidden soil, where every sound is the cry of the dead, and every rustle is an omen of doom. Here the boundary between worlds is erased, and the souls of the lost wander eternally. Never finding rest, these words quickened the hearts of the migrants. They realized that their journey was not merely a physical crossing of a border, but a venture into the depths of human fear and ancient mysteries. Winding through a labyrinth of branches and shadows, the group unexpectedly found themselves on an open clearing, where time seemed to stand still. The air here was heavy, with the scent of damp earth and ancient herbs, and the silence was so profound, it felt as if it could be cut with a knife. At the center of the clearing stood an old stone pillar, covered in runes that glowed with a dim green light. This pillar appeared to be the epicenter of a force, drawing the attention of all who dared to approach. Nizar stepped toward the pillar, and extending his hand, touched its cold surface. In that moment, the space around him began to distort, as if opening a portal to another realm. Memories of childhood, ancient legends, and forgotten rituals surged through him with an intensity he had never experienced. He saw images of people who had once trodden this very path, and heard their laments echoing from a distant past. All these visions merged into a single flow, leaving him with an overwhelming sense of inevitable fate. "This place," Nizar murmured. "Here, time and space intertwine, and the boundary between life and death is erased." Lyuba and Amin joined him, each feeling their hearts fill with a strange, almost hypnotic light. The medallion they had discovered shone even brighter now, confirming the significance of this moment. Yet with that brilliance came a foreboding. The awakened forest was now revealing its true nature. From the depths of the clearing came a roar, a sound like the lament of 1,000 voices, and dark clouds quickly gathered, obscuring the moon. The wind grew fierce, carrying with it the scent of burning wood and damp mold. It seemed nature itself was foretelling disaster should they continue their journey. But there was no turning back. The border they had so desperately sought beckoned them with its mysterious power. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and from beneath the pillar arose a thin, almost transparent figure that slowly assumed a human shape. Its face was marred by countless scars and deep wrinkles, and its eyes shone with an icy gleam. This entity, as if embodying all the suffering and fears of the departed, whispered, "You, lost souls, have dared to enter the forbidden zone where rest does not exist, and darkness reigns eternal. Each of you will pay the price for your desire to find a new life." These words, steeped in ancient wisdom and unmeasurable sorrow, resonated within each migrant's consciousness. In that moment, they understood. The border they had sought was not merely a line on a map, but a place where worlds collide, a place where the ghosts of the past reside, and every decision bears the weight of an eternal choice. Overcome with emotion and trembling with inner turmoil, the migrants froze, listening to the entity's voice, a voice both merciless and tragic. Summoning all his courage, Nazar stepped forward. "We have come here in search of hope," he began, his voice quivering yet resolute. "Perhaps our journey will be arduous, but we carry the memories of our loved ones and the dream of a better future. We do not fear the trials, even if they stem from ancient curses." Those around him wavered between fear and faith in a brighter tomorrow. Liuba clutched the medallion tightly, feeling its warmth seep into her soul, granting her strength and assurance. Amin, recalling the lessons taught to him in childhood, softly repeated incantations, calling upon ancient forces to support them in this battle for life. "May the forest accept us," Nazar declared, "and may our hearts, filled with light, banish the darkness of this place." He looked directly into the icy eyes of the spectral entity. In that instant, a strange ritual began to unfold around them. The trees, as if coming to life, whispered ancient words, and the wind carried echoes of thousands of voices. The medallion burst forth in radiant light, reflecting a brilliance that penetrated the very core of each migrant. Every word, every movement seemed part of a grand rite, destined to decide the fate of all present. The entity, witnessing their bravery, inclined its head slightly, an acknowledgement of their right to live. Yet its voice, cold and solemn, resounded once more. "The path you have chosen is laden with pain and suffering, yet within it lies the spark of salvation. You must undergo trials that will reveal the essence of your souls. Only by enduring them can you truly gain freedom." With these words, the dark sky itself appeared to split open as flashes of light danced overhead, as if the gods were watching this ritual. The migrants, feeling the ancient forces permeate their bodies, realized that their fate was now inextricably bound to this forest, this border where time and space merged into one. "Come," Nazar said softly, gathering the remaining light in his heart. "Our journey is not over. Let fear give way to faith, and darkness to light. We must press on." The following days proved to be a true test of will and spirit. The forest seemed to test their resolve, presenting new enigmas and traps at every turn. The trail leading to the border grew ever more winding and convoluted. Each step was accompanied by surreal visions, One moment, an unseen shadow appeared to follow them. The next, they saw silhouettes of long-departed souls wandering this world. In the pre-dawn mist, Nazar and his companions discovered an abandoned church, half ruined yet still standing as a mute witness to a bygone era. Its doors, adorned with carved images of saints and demons, seemed to beckon them inside. Within, a stifling silence reigned, broken only by the feeble light filtering through rusted windows that illuminated ancient altar stones. Upon the altar lay an old parchment inscribed with incomprehensible symbols and images. Cautiously, Lyuba picked it up, and at that moment, it was as if the church walls came alive, recounting the history of a forgotten rite, a ritual interweaving faith with a lingering curse. The parchment described ceremonies of purification and appeals to ancient forces, venerated by the inhabitants of this land, centuries before war and ruin scarred it. Perhaps this will help us understand what awaits us at the border, suggested Lyuba, studying the ancient signs intently. Nazar, feeling an inexplicable draw to the parchment's inscriptions, began to recite the words written on it. As soon as he uttered the first syllables, the air around them shimmered, and terror and awe spread across the faces of the migrants. The ancient writings glowed with a soft golden light, as if each letter were alive and brimming with power. In that moment, the forest outside the church seemed to awaken in a new dimension. The rustling of leaves, the sounds of nocturnal creatures, and the faint beat of ancient hearts merged into a single symphonic tapestry, one that testified to the truth that the boundary between life and death was indeed as delicate as a flower's petal, trembling in the wind. "We must move on," Nazar declared, understanding that the ritual was not only a trial, but also a true act of purification. Our path is one of redemption, and each of us must find within ourselves the strength to accept our destiny. Led by the strange light and the power of those ancient words, the migrants left the church and proceeded toward a place where, according to legend, the boundary between worlds was most tangible. Along the way, trials awaited them, not only external dangers, but also confrontations with their inner demons. In each of them, a battle raged between fear and hope, between the darkness of the past and the light of the future. Day gave way to night, and the migrants felt as though time itself had lost its meaning in this forest, a place where every moment brimmed with enigmas and tests. As they drew closer to the border itself, the forest began to change around them. The grass grew softer, the trees denser, and the air richer, as though imbued with ancient energies long dormant. One evening, as the sun sank behind the horizon, the group came upon a strange lake whose waters were as black as tar, mirroring the gloomy sky. At the lake's edge stood an old stone monument adorned with reliefs, depicting scenes of battles and rituals. Nazar paused before the monument, his gaze lingering on the symbols carved with such meticulous care that they seemed to convey the very essence of life and death. "This place is a threshold," Nazar whispered, "where the boundary between worlds is so fine that one might easily lose oneself in it, forgetting even one's own identity." Lyuba, clutching the medallion even tighter, sensed as if from the depths of the lake a thin mist was rising, gradually transforming into surreal figures. These figures, like reflections of lost souls, swirled above the water, a reminder that every redemption exacts its price. Among them, she recognized silhouettes of people who, in her heart, seemed part of her past. part of those she had lost. Amin, standing apart and watching, spoke with a mixture of fear and determination. We must remember who we are and accept what fate has decreed. Only then can we gather the strength to continue. Nazar nodded, and gazing at his companions said, "Each of us carries a spark of light, and even if darkness tries to engulf us, we must remember, within our hearts burns a fire capable of dispelling the deepest shadows, accompanied by the soft lapping of the dark water and the murmurs of ancient voices." The migrants reached the very edge of the lake. Here, the boundary between worlds was nearly tangible, a barely perceptible line, visible only in the water's reflection. This threshold beckoned with its mystery, promising both salvation and peril simultaneously. They stood on the cusp of the unknown, aware that ahead lay new trials, new encounters with enigmatic forces, and perhaps answers to the questions that had tormented their souls. In that moment, Liuba gripped the medallion even more firmly, feeling its warmth merge with her own energy, giving her the confidence and strength to move forward. "If we truly wish to find light," she murmured, "we must first embrace the darkness that surrounds us. Only then can we overcome all obstacles." With those words, to the sound of a night filled with echoes of forgotten histories, the migrants took a decisive step forward, leaving behind all they had known, and stepping into a realm where every shadow, every sound, and every breath became part of a grand mystical symphony. When they crossed that invisible line, the forest around them seemed transformed. The wind became gentler, and the trees appeared to welcome them with a soft rustle of leaves. Yet even in this seemingly idyllic state, the migrants could not forget the trials they had endured. Every step forward resonated in their hearts, reminding them of the losses and fears they had left behind. Now, as the sky lightened with the first rays of the sun, a new world unfolded before them, one where every plant and every creature seemed alive with awareness, living by ancient laws. Nazar looked around as if trying to capture every moment of this magical awakening. "Look at how the forest breathes, how it lives," he said, pointing to the tiny droplets of dew sparkling on the leaves. "It is as if it wishes to remind us that even after the darkest night comes the dawn." Liuba, still holding the medallion, listened intently to the awakening sounds of the forest. To her, each melody was a symbol of newfound hope, and every cool caress of air a sign that life persists despite everything. She recalled the words spoken inside the church and realized that every trial, every fear, was but a part of the journey toward true liberation. Amin, gradually finding solace, gazed up at the brightening sky, seeking answers to the questions that had long tormented his soul. He understood that now, with the border behind them, they must not only find a new home, but also summon the strength to reconcile with their past, to let go of the bitterness of loss, and open their hearts to love and faith. Yet the forest was not ready to let them go so easily. Ahead, an ancient path reappeared, strewn with symbols left by those who had once sought salvation. Stones inscribed with words in a forgotten tongue told the story of struggle and belief, a tale in which the fates of many generations intertwined. Nazar paused before one such stone, and bending over, read aloud, "Those who seek the light must pass through the darkness, seek the strength within, and fear not the pain. Borders are but an illusion concealing the truth, for within every heart lies an eternal awakening." These words seemed to penetrate each soul, stirring ancient powers and evoking images of long-lost eras. The migrants realized that their journey was not merely a physical relocation, but a spiritual quest that led to self-discovery and reconciliation with one's innermost being. In the distance, the gentle chime of bells was heard, as if someone were welcoming their arrival. Those sounds, both delicate and majestic, enveloped them in a sense of peace and assurance. Every ring of the bell appeared to tell a story of great harmony that connected the realm of the living with that of the spirits. "Let's move forward," Nazar said, feeling an invisible force guiding their path. "May each trial become a stepping stone to our awakening, to a new beginning." They continued along the path, where every stone and every branch recounted the story of those who had once walked this way. The forest greeted them both tenderly and sternly, as if testing their faith and resolve. But with every step, the feeling grew stronger that the light they sought was nearer than ever. At sunset, when the sky blazed in fiery reds and golden hues, the migrants reached the final stage of their journey, a place where the forest seemed to transform into something otherworldly. Before them lay a vast clearing, dotted with wildflowers shining in the glow of the setting sun. This place was like the crowning moment of their long and perilous journey, a border that divided the past and the future, fear and hope, darkness and light. Nazar stepped forward and paused in the center of the clearing. He raised the medallion that Liuba had so carefully guarded, and looking at the radiant sunset, he declared, "Here, at this crossroads of worlds, our new path begins. Let each of us find within ourselves the strength to embrace our destiny, and despite the darkness of the past, welcome the light into our hearts." At that moment, the sky filled with thin, almost transparent silhouettes, apparitions of those who had once sought deliverance and found it here, at the border between worlds. Their voices, tender yet sorrowful, melded into one melodic hymn extolling life and rebirth. Liuba, lowering her gaze to the medallion, felt a warming radiance flood her being. Every moment of her soul, every breath, filled with the realization that her journey was not merely an escape from pain, but a quest for profound truth, a truth to which all living beings aspire. She lifted her eyes and saw the same spark reflected in the eyes of her companions, a spark capable of conquering any darkness. "We have endured trials," she said softly, "and now, despite all we have lost, we shall claim our new life. May this clearing stand as a symbol of our renewal and faith in a brighter future." At that very moment, as if bestowing its blessing from above, a gentle rain of sparkling droplets began to fall from the sky, each drop reflecting the beauty of the world. This rain was not mere water, it was like tears of joy, a reminder that every pain eventually gives way to healing. Amin, standing nearby, raised his hands to the heavens, as if accepting this gift of fate, and murmured words of gratitude. His voice, filled with wonder and conviction, merged with the whispering wind as his prayers were carried away into the endless expanse. "We know that many more trials lie ahead," Nazar said, gazing at his fellow travelers. "But it is through these trials that we gain the strength to change our destiny. Our story is just beginning, and this forest, with all its mysteries and mystical signs, will remain a part of our great journey." In that clearing, surrounded by a nature imbued with ancient rites and the voices of bygone eras, the migrants felt that they were no longer alone. deep within the forest, in every rustle of the leaves and every glimmer of the sunset, they saw the images of those who had gone before and those who would follow. They understood that their fate was not solely the result of their own choices, but a part of an eternal story written by all who dare to dream and search for light, even in the deepest darkness. As night descended gently and the stars began to twinkle high above, the migrants, filled with renewed faith and determination, took the final step toward their new life. The border they had sought was no longer just a line on a map. It had become a symbol of transition, a rite of purification, and above all, a hope for a better future. This story is not merely a tale of fear and mysticism. It is a chronicle of human resilience, a search for light in the darkest times, a triumph over inner demons, and an acceptance of fate as it is. May its echo remain with you, a reminder that even in the most sinister forest, behind every turn lies the chance for a new beginning. If you enjoyed this mystical journey, be sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share this video with your friends. Your support helps us continue to tell stories that touch the soul and rekindle our belief in miracles. Weeks after that fateful journey, the destinies of the migrants diverged along different paths, yet their hearts remained forever bound to the forest of forgotten shadows. Nazar became a local storyteller, recounting the tale of the border between worlds, so that no one might forget that every trial carries the possibility of discovering truth and light. Liuba, with her medallion, found solace in the mystical forces of the forest that had granted her the strength to accept her fate. Amin devoted his life to the study of ancient rites, so that through the wisdom of the past, he might help others find their way through the darkness. Sometimes, on quiet nights, when the moonlight illuminates the old trails, one can hear the forest whispering about those who dared to cross the border between worlds. Its sounds remind us that fear and hope are inseparable, and every loss is merely a step on the path to great rebirth. Thus, life continues, full of mystical secrets, ancient rites, and the endless search for light that can always be found even in the deepest darkness. And if you ever find yourself at the boundary between worlds, remember, beyond every trial lies the possibility of attaining true freedom in love